Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with another WoW video, and this one's going to be about healing and what buttons to press. I know, like, really good title there, right? But I feel like it is sort of most apt, right? As you know, in Classic, you kind of have a lot more buttons, especially how it goes with downranking and stuff like that. So I'll be the first to admit I'm very new to this. Might as well pick up this herb while we're here, right? I'm very new to this, and this is going to be my thoughts as a priest that's kind of like learning to play. Obviously, I've, before getting into raiding and stuff like that, after leveling my priest, I got a lot of feedback from people in terms of like what I should be using, and have based a lot of my strategies off of that as well, and made some adjustments. So I'm gonna go through like some popular things that I use, and yeah, feel free to talk about it in the comments. So as far as this stuff, like, I'm not really gonna go over like abolish disease and cleanse, because that's just something that needs to happen or doesn't, right? And yeah, so that's pretty simple. Don't use any of the lesser heals, because I don't think that they benefit from the full coefficient. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so that one isn't even... These aren't even fast. 2 second, yeah, okay. There's really, like, no reason to use these, because they're so low level. I think that anything below level 20 doesn't get the proper coefficient treatment. Like, it has a really bad plus healing coefficient. And they also just heal for a really pitiful amount base. Okay, so... moving on from that, let's go into like the bread and butter heals. So basically, for greater heal and heal, right, I use rank 4 heal and rank 2 greater heal, and then I have a max rank greater heal on my bar that I usually will pair almost exclusively with Divine Focus. Sometimes I will also pair highest rank Flash Heal with Divine Focus. It just kind of depends what's going on in a fight. But yeah, I pretty much don't cast that super consistently. Although it would be an option for me if I'm going to be cancel casting on a tank or something like that. And that's mostly what I use these bigger, slower heals for, is to heal tanks. So like if I'm on Ani, for example, like I'll just be cancel casting my heal, or greater heal rank 2. And if I'm pretty much, like, how I do tank healing in general is that if I feel it's appropriate, I will have a renew on the tank. And then the idea is that the shield is the panic button, right? Where if somebody takes an unexpected chunk of damage, you're going to want to immediately shield them because it's instant. The only time I would go against that is I like doing some fights, particularly like Golemag, with pre-shields, because if a tank takes aggro on too many targets or something like that, having that extra buffer of 1.3k health or something like that helps a lot. So that's the time I'll use pre-shields, but typically for tank healing, it's greater heal and normal heal. And I'll just be cancel casting those on the tank, depending on, the rank being dependent on how hard I think he's going to get hit. And, when he does get hit, I just let the cast finish. If not, I cancel it. And helps you really be super mana efficient and save mana, because the problem is if spamming something like a tank in particular can be really problematic, because tanks have a lot of mitigation. And some of that mitigation will completely mitigate the hit, or something like a dodge, for example, right? So if you're just literally spamming heals on the tank, anticipating them getting hit, you're basically wasting a ton of mana, right? So you want to be able to be reactive, but you don't want to be reactive in the sense that you just start reacting the moment he gets hit, because then if he gets chunked for like 1.5k, and you start your 2.5 second heal, he's going to maybe get hit once or twice more, which could put him in a low area, right? So you want to have heals be casting all the time when you're casting on tanks. And that's why you can use the more efficient, longer casting heals, because you're already queuing them beforehand. And I've heard this is like a very common thing for a boss, like, people always mention like patchwork and stuff like that, but it's really just a good tactic in general, right? There's almost like no reason not to be doing it. To be doing it another way is just a waste of mana. Or to be too slow reacting. You're putting your tank's health in jeopardy. So that's how I like to heal tanks, pretty much with those. And like I said, I'll mostly use rank 2 greater heal or rank 4 heal, as well as mixing shields in there for emergencies. And then flash heals can be great to supplement, especially when you don't have shields. So for example, like, let's say the tank has, I don't know if it's actually called, it's Weakened Soul, yeah. So the tank has Weakened Soul on him, so he's already been shielded or something like that. You're casting a heal, and then he takes a big hit, right? Like a huge hit. Maybe he gets crushed or something like that. So obviously you're going to let your heal finish, right? And then you're going to supplement that by immediately pumping into him a max rank flash heal, right? And that's going to help stabilize him, basically, because you don't want to start casting after you've just been hit by a huge amount. You don't want to cast another big heal after the one you just let hit, right? The idea is that you want to get like a big burst of healing on him as quickly as possible when you don't have your shield. So you let the first heal finish, then you hit him with the flash heal. If you think it's a really dire situation, you can even use your cooldown like Divine Focus here to make sure it crits. So now he's getting like your full normal heal, which is supposed to be bigger, basically, right? Hitting him. And then 1.5 seconds later, he's getting a crit strike flash heal pumped into him. So yeah, that's kind of like my strategy there to deal with like unexpected burst damage or something like that when you don't have shield up. And obviously, I say that not having shield up, you want to be able to shield a tank. And this is a very important thing too, is on fights where the tank's life is actually in jeopardy. I would highly, highly recommend, don't just throw shields out willy-nilly. On a lot of fights, like what you can kind of get away with if you're trying to pad meters or something, is you can toss like power word shields out there on people are going to be taking damage, right? Like tanks or whatever. And the idea is that it's basically free healing that can't be given to anybody else because it's an absorb, right? So the mob has to go through the shield before it hits them. And if it's like low stake situations, that's not really the biggest thing in the world. It's just kind of like cheesy or whatever, right? But the problem is when you have high stake situations where the tank is getting hit for, very large amounts, and then you're trying to almost like cheese like that. Basically what happens is the tank has a Weakened Soul on him when you need it to not be on him, and then he dies, right? So on fights where damage is like super relevant on the tank, definitely don't be using those shields willy-nilly. Either use them preemptively if you're timing it for like a big boss ability going to hit, or you can use it just reactively, like immediately after. The thing is, if you use it beforehand, right, preemptively, it gives you a better chance to stabilize the tank quicker, obviously, because the problem is when you shield reactively, you incur the GCD, right? And the GCD is going to prevent you from starting that flash heal because the shield itself was instant. Like, usually you don't have this problem, right? Because if I'm flash healing, the GCD is over by the time the flash heal finishes. So I can immediately start casting on the flash heal, right? But if I shield, I'm mashing flash heal, see, I can't get it off until the next thing. So that is something where if you can predict the damage via boss timer or something like that, you probably want to have the shield on beforehand, because then you can immediately start going into another heal right after, right? Yeah, so that's the ideal circumstance for sure, but obviously just, reactive shields are never bad. So let's get on to some other abilities here. Renew. I want to talk about Renew. I'm not in the right. Okay. So Renew. So Renew, I basically use rank 5 Renew and max rank Renew. Now, max rank Renew, I pretty much will only use on tanks. An exception to this is like pets sometimes. A lot of people don't heal pets, and you know, this isn't like vanilla WoW where pets get like insane damage reduction. And if they die, it's kind of like a pain in the ass for the hunters and stuff like that. So I try and keep pets alive as much as possible, as long as it doesn't mean, you know, raid members dying or something like that. So the reason why I'm more apt to use a max rank Renew on a pet is because I don't think, especially if I know that pet hasn't been getting healed all night, I can cast it on the pet and be reasonably assured I'm going to get its full value out of it. You know what I mean? And obviously, it's also contingent on how much damage the pet is taking, right? Like if the pet gets chunked to half and then it's going to get chunked to half again, and you want to save it, you won't cast a Renew there. But in a lot of cases, you're going to have ample time to heal the pets up in between them getting chunked, because it's going to be some type of AoE damage, which means that something like Renew basically would work fine. So that's a case I'd use max rank Renew. Most of the time, though, if I'm using Renew on like... and the reason why I'd want to use it on the tank is because basically how you want to think of Renew on a tank is that you're never going to get the full output of the Renew on tank, right? Because a Renew itself, except in a dungeon, Renew can do a lot of work on a tank, especially if you're very geared, if you're over geared for the content. And that's because you're healing so much, and the damage from that the dungeon mobs are doing is obviously substantially less than raid mobs, because there's less healers in the dungeon, right? So they don't expect you to be, you know, popping the tank back up every half second or something like that. You know what I mean? So Renew can do a lot of work in dungeons, specifically on tanks, like max rank Renew. However, in a raid scenario, your tank's health is going to be oscillating a lot. He's going to be getting, because obviously you don't want to have your tank really ever below his maximum health pool, if possible, for very long, because that just leaves him to be more vulnerable to be crushed and killed, right? So you always want to keep him as high as possible, so people are not going to be waiting for your Renew to like uptick him. You know what I mean? They're basically just going to be spamming the tank whenever he's not at full. They're going to have heals casting on him even when he is full, so as soon as he takes damage, he's going to pop back up. So Renew on the tank is pretty much, it's like just an extra little thing there that could potentially save him if it ticks in the right spot. It's like a contingency plan, right? And because it's a contingency plan, you're never going to get the full value out of it, but it also doesn't make sense to use a lower rank, right? I mean, you want to use only whatever rank you can sustain, but assuming you can sustain keeping the highest rank on the tank, there's no point in having like a rank 6 Renew on the tank, right? Because it's just going to decrease the chances that Renew tick is going to be able to save the tank's life, right? So that's why you always use max rank Renew on the tank. In terms of healing raid members, that's where I pretty much use rank 5 Renew most of the time. And I will caution you to say that, again, even that is way more effective in dungeons. Because dungeons, people just take a lot of chip damage, maybe they'll get aggro, and then it goes right back on the tank. And there's no other healer, right? That's the key in dungeons. So you really get to abuse the 1-to-1 coefficient on Renew, because none of it's getting sniped. You put it on somebody, and the only person who can snipe it is yourself. You know, like if you cast it on somebody who's half life, and then you hit him with a flash heal, well, then you just fucked yourself. But you have control of that, whereas in raid, other people are typically the ones that are going to be sniping people, etc. Even if you have something like heal comm, I've noticed my heal comm does not work with like non-max rank Renew. And I mean, to be honest, like people are still going to probably heal over you, so there's really just no point in bothering to raid heal with renew a lot of the times. I will say that the one exception to this is in circumstances where other people's mana is low. So on longer fights, like particularly Rag and Domo, towards the end of the fight, sometimes people will actually be from spamming, especially if they're spamming like their flash heals and stuff like that. So in cases like that, if you still have 30-40% mana left, you can actually get out a lot of rank 5 renews there and have them rolling on, tons of people in the raid at the same time, pick up a lot of healing. So that's a case where definitely, if there's any type of like rot damage, or if your other healer's mana is kind of relatively low as to where they won't be sniping you, the perfect situations to use renew. But other than that, I would say it's not really a huge part of your toolkit. So, Prayer of Healing next. This one's kind of self-explanatory. Basically, how I look at it is like, it's super mana efficient if you can hit everybody with it, right? You can just see right here, 1,000 mana is huge, but 900 to basically like 1,000, right, to everybody in the party. So if everybody is minus 1k, that's 5k healing done for 1,000 mana. If you look at something like a flash heal, where is it? Max rank flash heal, you're gonna get basically like 3k healing out there for 1,000 mana, essentially, right? So it's unequivocally super mana efficient as long as it's all being used. It's really great to pair with Divine Focus, but it's just situational, and unfortunately in this version of the game you can only cast it on your group, and that's going to really limit like how effective you can be with it. But keep in mind that the range on it is pretty big, so it's usually not like an actual problem, right, in terms of like people being out of range and stuff like that. So that's good. So we've done heal, greater heal. Something I want to mention about heal and greater heal too, and the reason why I did them together is because to me they're basically on the same continuum. Usually how I would differentiate spells is like based on their cast time, or if they do something super unique like prayer healing, right? So flash heal I differentiate from heal and greater heal because it actually has only a 1.5 second cast time, or 1.4 with the set bonus, right? Whereas these greater heals and heal are basically just on the same continuum because they have the same cast time. So flash heal I use rank 4 and rank max rank here basically. Pretty much I use max rank whenever I can get away with it, in particular on boss fights. Like if I know the fight's going to be short, I'm pretty much flash healing the entire fight because I know that I won't ooh myself, right? On trash, since trash is like an extended endeavor, if I'm spotting people, I'd prefer to spot them with this because it's just way less mana intensive. And most of the time they're not taking enough damage to really be worth pumping a max rank in. So there's that. Yeah, those are pretty much... Oh, and then max rank on the tank. To me, like, if you're using flash rank on the flash heal on the tank, right, the reason why you're using it is because he's in trouble. So there's almost no reason to ever use a low rank. The one, like, caveat to that is that sometimes if the tank is, like, not... Let's say he's not topped off completely, I will just queue up, like, a rank 4 flash heal. You know what I mean? Like, if he's very close to being topped but not topped, and the idea there is to just, top him completely, and if he gets hit during that period, then the whole heal is going to help him anyway, especially if it crits, right? So those are situations I'll use a lower rank flash on the tank, but it's kind of very few and far between. If there's any type of crunch time situation, you're pretty much spamming the shit out of this. So, yeah. Holy Nova, I don't find myself using this too often. it's just like it doesn't do a lot of healing, obviously, for the amount of mana it costs, but it is instant. And on trash, on particularly like surgers and stuff like that, you can actually use this like really quickly and snipe a lot of healing like that. I would say in terms of like it being a bread and butter part of your kit, though, not really. It's more of like a few and far between. And I think that's kind of like all your main healing spells, right? In terms of Power Word Shield, we already went over using it on tanks. I mean, otherwise, you're basically just going to be casting it on people that you know are going to take damage, or casting it on people who've maybe taken a huge hit. The problem I have with casting it on people who've taken a huge hit is that if your tanks are really good, in a lot of cases, what would be better is for you to just flash heal them. Power Word Shield is the safest play, right? Because, like, let's say I had this happen one time where we pull Gar and the mage takes a hit, right? Now, I have the opportunity to shield him, but I'm thinking, like, okay, the tank probably got aggro, right? On that ad. So I'm just going to start the flash heal and he ended up dying. So in a situation like that, it would have been way better to use Power Word Shield, because maybe he lives if I get a shield on him and it's instant. But in a lot of cases, people are going to pull aggro for brief periods of time and don't necessarily need a shield. But the way I look at it is kind of like, would you rather just shield them and then they don't lose their world buffs, or not shield them and they lose their world buffs? You'd obviously rather just shield them. It doesn't take that much mana, you know what I mean? And unless the shield needs to be critically used within the next 4 seconds on somebody else, I would much rather just, play the safe route and pop the shield on there. So that's pretty much my healing philosophy in raids and dungeons. I would say in dungeons specifically, just really rely on Renew a lot more. Like, Renew is so mana efficient, it's insane, and it'll really help you out in dungeons. Go to town with Renew there. But in raid, not so much. Just be using flash heals if you're healing a tank. Your bread and butter is going to be greater in normal heal, with flash heal in the interim, and using shields when appropriate. So thank you very much for watching, and talk to you guys later.